Hello everyone, this is my first video of a new playlist on Linux. So the reason I'm doing it is, first of all, Linux is very important in many robotics and other engineering applications. Second of all, since next I'm gonna make a playlist on ROS, and ROS really works on Linux, I need to talk first a little bit about Linux and how to work with it, and then we go to the ROS. So here I have this computer, a dual boot with Ubuntu system on it, and we are going to learn a little bit about Linux and how to operate it. I'm using this OBS Studio to record my videos, and so you're gonna see that here on the site. So first thing first is, Linux is an operating system like the Windows or the Mac. So what is the major difference between these? The first one is Linux is open source and free, while Windows and Mac operating systems are not. Okay, that is one of the biggest advantage, free and also open source. You can modify. It's highly customizable. Another thing that many people use Linux is it's very strong in terms of security and stability. So it's typically good for people who are developers and they want to also use it in servers and so on. Many servers are running on the Linux. And of course, it's a little bit harder to learn because you need to do many things through a command window. Now, of course, there is also a graphical version of it like a Windows 2. You can see here, so I can now go to my files, for instance, and go to my folders. Many of the Windows command, Control-C, Control-V, Control-X, all of them work here, but many people will use the terminal, this guy here, which we're gonna see. So it needs a little bit more learning. And sometimes on some system it might have hardware issues, and the support of it in terms of commercial software, games and so on is more limited compared to Windows and Mac. So Mac and Windows are really flashy, they look so nice, they have a bunch of different UIs or user interfaces, amazing graphic and so on. And Windows is really good for engineers who want to run different commercial software on them. Mac is not as you know, adaptable to many software. It's mostly really for Mac only, or to a good extent. So if you just want to run some software, Windows, if you want to do some developing stuff, ROS and stuff, Linux, and if you don't want any of them, probably Mac, and you have a lot of money. Of course, that's my personal take on that. Now, why is Linux secure? Because that's one of the biggest things. Why is Linux secure? So the biggest thing is user privilege. Okay, so you have regular users, and then you have a super user and admin that can do a lot of changes, system-wide changes. The other thing is open source, transparent, and basically the updates are not typically forced onto you, and you can pick on them. Another thing is it's a modular structure, so these different components of it, which we're going to talk about, they run independently. So if one of them is compromised, it's not necessarily that the others will be compromised too. And we said that it has a big permission system, it has an active security community, and the fact that there are fewer Linux users in the world in general, and it's not really used in big companies mostly, it is not going to be super attractive to hackers and mass market attackers. So in general, it's more used for security purposes, and as I said, open source. The name of the developer that he developed it in 1991 was, I always forget his family name, Linus Torvalds in Finland in 1991 or so. and he started it as a kind of hobby, and then it grew bigger and bigger, and it is a spin-off of Unix basically. So what are the major components of a Linux system? The major component is a bootloader, which initializes the system, okay, and the Linux kernel. Now the kernel is like the major part of the operating system. This is the one that manages hardware, the scheduling, memory, processes, and so on, and drivers. You barely typically work with this kernel unless you really want to go low level in the system and change these priorities of software, hardware, and so on. So most of the time, the major one that we work with, at least, is the shell, and we're going to talk about it. But there are other things called daemons, and these are the background services that they start when you boot, and again, these you mostly don't touch them. The one, as I said, you work a lot with it is this command line interface shell, and like bash and other ones, that this is where you type in your commands and get the things done. There are graphical servers, okay, and there are desktop environments and applications. So these are the major components. As I said, we want to work with this guy. Now this guy is called a terminal, okay, and you might say, is terminal the same as shell? No. They are very similar and related, but not similar. I mean, they are very majorly related, but they are not the exact same thing. So let me explain that, and then we're going to come back to the distribution. So while shell and terminal, and this is again a terminal, are very closely related, but they are different things. What is a shell? A shell is the actual program that takes your commands and executes, interpret and execute them. Okay, so when you give it a command like ls, cd, cat, echo, stuff like that, it takes them, it runs them, and so on. Okay, so this is like the brain that gets your commands done and executed. The terminal is the graphic, is the user interface, is the window that allows you to work with shell. So what you're doing right now here, this is your terminal. When you type in a command like cd or who am I or anything like that, right? Basically, you're typing that command in this graphic window. It takes this command, pass it to the shell execute it, and give you some result. By the way, this command will give you the current user, which is me in this case. Okay? Or if you say cd or ls or any of these things, right? Again, all of them are the commands that shell will run, but you type them here in this graphic window, and sometimes they have options here for different things, or you can get some of them in here. You see that you can create a window, new window, full screen. You can go to preferences, right? You can change the light style or darker style, right? There are some options. So these options are actually the options of the terminal. They are not the shell that is the brain behind this. So I just wanted you to know that these are two different things. Another terminology that you need to know is called a Linux distribution or distro. It is basically a complete operating system that is built around the Linux kernel, but you bundle it with different software tools and package management systems. So basically, there are different flavors of Linux, different versions of Linux. The core is the same, but the basically bundles, the software, the stuff that come with it, they look a little bit different. The most common one that I'm using right now is Ubuntu, which is very user-friendly and popular for this computer, which I have, a desktop or server. There is Debian, Fedora, and so on and so forth. Okay, in your command window or terminal here, if you want to know which version you are using, you can use this command here, lsp_release-a. So let's run it. I did lab lsp There we go. And you see that it says the distribution ID is Ubuntu and the description is 24.4.1. Okay, so the release is 24 and the code name is Noble. So this will tell you what, this command here will tell you what basically distribution of Linux you are working with. You see, for me is Ubuntu 24. Okay, now that we learn a little bit about some basic terminologies and a good thing about Linux, now let's go ahead and learn a little bit about the basically the format or the construction of a Linux command, so, or structure of it. So in general, a Linux command would look like this. You provide the command, then you follow by options and then the arguments. For instance, for command, this is the major basically program or built-in instruction, like you say ls, right, which is a list, which is providing the details, the list of the files and folders within your current directory, or catenation or grep or cp or so on. Okay, so for instance, remember I gave you the command who am I, that shows you the current user. Another command is who. For instance, if I go back here in the command window and say, or in the shell and say who, look, it shows who has been logged into the system and since when. Okay, so who shows the current users and the starts and the date, the start time of their login. But remember, who am I just gives you the name of the current user. Okay, or there is the command ls. As I said, ls gives you the list of everything you have in your current location, which in this case is home. So if I go here, look under home, this is what I'm taking the list of. So you see these are a bunch of folders and one of them is a file, and if you go back and take a look, you see that all of these folders are in blue color and then this file, individual file, is in white color. So it has color codes for different types of entities, right? Folders and files, they have different things. So you see it says ls. Okay, so that is your command, or echo. You can say echo and then say Linux is hard to learn, right? Okay, and then it basically prints that onto the screen for me. So this is like the disp command in MATLAB, or print, right, or anything like that that you see in Python, and cd out, all of those you see in C++. So this is your basic command here. Now the options or the flags, they modify the behavior of the command, and you typically see them coming after a dash. Okay, for short options, if they are long options, there will be double dashes. Like what? You see, for instance, if after the ls command you say -l or double dash long, it provides detail listing. Let's go back here to the command window. So remember I said ls, it just gave me this. Now I said ls-l. Look, you see, now it gives you more information about them. The dates, then the times they have been modified, and some information about who made them and so on. Okay, yeah, so you see that it has now more information. Or if you saw, I could say double dash long, and it says in this case that is not recognized. Okay, so in this distribution it does not like this double dash long. It only works with what? With the -l. So that is what it is working. Now that's not the only option that you have for the ls. It has a lot more. Okay, and by the way, if you just go back 1 second, you see it says what? Try ls double dash help. You see, this one will give you more information on the command. So if you want to know more about the syntax of the command, type the command double dash and then help. Now make sure you have the space here, and then you see help, and look what you see. So look here, you see that If you say dash A means show everything. Don't ignore anything, show everything you have. Look, let's go to L. You see here, use a long listing format, right? If you say, for instance, what? If you say, let's look at one good one. So list the entries by lines instead of columns, right? Do not sort. List the entries in directory order. Don't sort them anything, right? So you see that you can use dash U, dash X, right? And dash 1 means list one file per line, correct? So if I just go back and say ls dash 1, you see the difference. Look at that with the ls. Ls shows all of them in one line, but if I say dash 1 means show each item in one new line, okay? So these are different options that you have, and you can learn more about it by double dash help. Okay, by the way, when your screen is very busy like this and you want to clean it up, use the command clear, and you can clean up what? Your screen. There we go. So this is about a flag or option. Now, if you have more than one option, you saw for this one, this ls, you had tons of options. Can you combine some of them? Can you have two of them in one line? Absolutely. For instance, one of the commands you have is called word count, WC. And what you need to pass to it is some option, and the third thing that you need to pass to it is the argument, okay, which is basically the target, whether it's file, directory, or something. So what does this one do? It reads this file, my file, and tell you how many words are in it, okay? Yes? So let's go ahead and run this command, see what happens. And we can do it with dash L, dash W, or both of them. So let's take a look, see what this command does. So here, remember that in the home directory, I have this file called my file. And now I want to go to my file, and I want to use the word count. So I say WC-L, and then it was called myfile.txt, huh? So you see, it says this file does not exist. Now, if you just say my file, right? You see, it works. So pay attention. I deliberately did this so you see that you do not need to provide the extension. Just provide the name when you work with this. And what does it say? It says this guy has four. For what? 4 lines. Look here, if I go back and open it for you, it's a simple text file, and you see it only has 4 lines. So when you say WC-L, what did it do? Did it read the number of words? No. It only read the number of lines for me. Okay? Now look, if I go back and run the same command but without the dash L, what would it do? It gives you now several things. What is that? 4 lines, 23 and 107. Well, what was that? Take a look here. 23, 107. You probably can see looking at this that 23 is the number of words. And what is 107? Yes, that's the number of characters. So you see that WC just does not read words, it reads lines, it reads characters. Okay? But which one of them do you want it to show? If you don't say anything, it shows all of them. If you say dash L, only shows the number of lines. Now, if you want to show lines and words, what would you say? You say, well, dash L, dash W. Show me both the lines and the words. And there we go. You see? It shows 4 and 23. Or you can combine now. Now that you have L and W, can you combine them into one? So can you just say dash LW, right? And use one dash, and you see that the answer is yes. So instead of 2 separate dashes and options, you can put them both in one dash and combine these options into one. Okay, and that is what I mentioned here for you. So the command, the options that you can get from the help, see how many you have, and then the argument, which could be a file, a directory, or anything. Okay, good. And so far, by the way, I have shown you these two commands, and I showed you this one. Let me work on these two, and then there are a few other things that I want to talk about. One of them is this is not like a major command, but that's a cool command, is the calendar command. So let me just show you that. So let's say for this month, which is November 25, you want to see the calendar printed on the screen. So hey, give me the calendar of November 2025. And there we go. You get the calendar of this month, right? I really like this myself too. And another one is the ls, right? So go ahead and to the folder bin and show me that. So right now, you see, when I did ls, it ran it on the home. But if I say ls and then /bin, now it goes to a folder called bin, and that folder has tons of files and directories in it, and you can see that here, right? So this is your home. Where is this bin? For bin is not here. You go under other locations. And now, remember I said my computer is dual boot, so I go under Ubuntu, and there we go. This is bin. Okay, and now if you can go, you see all of these things that command ls brought for me. So you see the direction is what? /bin. And that is exactly what we did over here. Okay, so going back, other than the command options and arguments, is there anything else? Yes, 3 extra things I want to talk about. One of them is called pipe, redirection, and then the command substitution. So what are these? The pipe, which you use a basically like an or sign or a vertical line. This one is used to send the output of one command as the input of another command. So you can basically run a chain of commands with it. Like what? Here you say ls -l, so basically give me a detailed list of everything there is in the current directory. But when you get that, grep.text, what does that one do? So, hey, get all of that, but only show the ones that have an extension .text. Don't show me everything in that current folder. Only get them, but then filter out of them what the .text one. Okay? So what does that do? So if I say ls-l, that would return everything, right? And you see, this is the file I showed you, and then that file, the extension is not .txt. So I opened it and saved it as a new version, myfile1.txt. This one is a txt. So now if I just want to see the only .txt extension files, that is where I use that ls, right? And then pipe, and then grep, and then what? .txt. That means take all of this and only filter out for me the one that is .txt. So ideally it should only return this one. Let's see if it does. And you see that the only thing it returns is this one here, because that is the only thing that has .txt. Okay, so this is the passing the output of one command as the input of the other command, which you do with the pipe. Now, the last two things that we want to talk about, one of them is called redirection, which basically redirects the input or output of a command. Instead of to screen, it is going to redirect it to a file or from a file instead. And these are using this bigger than, less than, or these double arrows, right? So if I use a forward arrow, like a bigger than like this, this will send the output to a file and it will overwrite whatever it has. If I just want to append it, I have to use 2 of that, okay? This one will append whatever you want to write to the bottom of that file. And if you want to read something from a file, then you use this inward arrow direction or less than, that will read something from the file. So let's say if I run this command here, what does it do? So it says echo system log start. If I don't do this portion, it just will write on the screen for me system log start or started. But if I say, hey, write it to this file log.txt. Now, if that file does not exist, it will what? It will create it, then write over that. So let's go ahead and do it. So let's see. Yeah, you cannot just directly copy paste, huh? Yeah, no cheating. So you have to say, okay, what I want is echo, and then system, or let's say screen log started. Yes. Now I'm gonna send it to this file called log.txt. Good. So I do that. Now let's run the ls one more time. You see, now you have this file called log.txt, and if you go there, you should be able to see that. There we go. And look, it says a screen log started. Now what do I do here? If I write something else and say, let's say ended, for instance, what does this one do? Is that gonna write that ended to the bottom of that started? No, because I'm using a single one here. It should overwrite it, so I should only get this text screen log ended in that file, nothing else. Well, let's go ahead and check that here. So look, you see, it's what? It's overwritten. And now if I redo it, so let's first say started, but now for the ended I use 2 of them. Okay, so I try to append it like this, and now if I go back and look, you see, now you're appending. And then you can also read material from the file. All you need is to basically reverse the direction of the arrow, and this is where you can take input from the file. So if we want to, now how do we write the content of that log text on the screen? So that is not done with echo, you have to use cat. So, and we'll see cat later, but cat and then what? In, and then log.txt. Okay, and you see now the content of that is written on the screen. So you read it in and you show it. Now if you do echo, you're not gonna get anything. Okay, so let me show you. If you do that, you see you're just gonna get blank space. Okay, so when you read it with this basically redirection, you have to show it with the cat in this case. Okay, so going back to the last thing, this is called command substitution, and you use a $sign next to the command. So this takes the output of the command and not pass it to another command like the pipes did. It uses it as a part of another command. Like what? For instance, I get the user, whoever it is, in this case me, with who am I, and then I'm gonna put it inside the rest of this text which says current user is. So that is gonna replace this part with my name, and it is gonna show it on the screen. Okay, but since this is a command, okay, this one will get the result of that, and when it's inside the double quotation, it's just a text, and the echo is gonna show that. So let me show you that one. So you say echo, and then current user is. Now here is the part that you say a $sign, and inside of it you say what? You say who am I, right? And then you get out and do this, and there we go. You see, current user is me. So I got the result of that and plugged it into another command. So these are the major things: substitution, redirection, pipe, arguments, option, and the command itself. So this was like our first video. We got some introduction to Linux and did some basic things. And stay tuned for my next videos where I showed you more. I will show you some more commands. First we use the common ones, and then we're gonna go for more advanced ones. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.